An entitled woman had just hurled a cake at Judge Judy, and the entire courtroom went completely still. No one shifted. No one even seemed to breathe. What followed wasn't just surprising. It was almost impossible to believe. That cake wasn't simply a burst of anger. It marked the start of a truth Lacey had been concealing for months, a truth Judge Judy would slowly unravel, layer by layer, until everyone realized this situation had nothing to do with frosting. It was about deception, retaliation, and a breakdown so intense it changed everything. The courtroom doors had only just closed behind the last spectator when everything fell apart. The cake, dense layers and thick icing, slid across the bench, pink buttercream dripping over the edge and hitting the floor in soft, sticky drops. The sugary scent filled the air, strangely cheerful against the heavy tension gripping the room. Judge Judy didn't rise. She didn't react outwardly at all. She simply stared at Lacey, her calm expression carrying an edge that felt almost threatening. Her eyes narrowed slightly, just enough to signal that something serious was about to unfold. The bailiff, tall but hesitant, stepped closer out of instinct. His hand hovered near Lacey's arm, uncertain whether stepping in would calm things down or make them spiral further. Lacey tilted her head toward him, looking almost unimpressed. "Relax," she said, casually flicking frosting from her wrist. "It's just cake." Her tone was light, but there was a fragile sharpness beneath it, like she was forcing herself to appear in control. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, leaving a streak of icing across her cheek like a badge she wasn't ashamed to wear. Across the aisle, Mara Levinson, the owner of a small local bakery, stood shaking. A piece of cake clung to her blouse, slowly sliding down the soft-colored fabric. She held herself tightly, as if even the slightest movement might cause her to break apart completely. Her eyes shimmered as she blinked quickly, trying to hold herself together. Judge Judy leaned back slightly, resting her elbows on the bench as she took in everything. The trembling in Mara's shoulders, the frosting dripping onto legal papers, the silent audience leaning forward in shock, and Lacey, standing there with crossed arms and lifted chin, masking instability with forced confidence. "Miss Durham," Judge Judy said, her voice thin but firm, "did you just throw a cake in my courtroom?" Lacey shrugged, her smile stretching wider. "She had it coming," she replied, gesturing toward Mara without even glancing at her. "You would too if you knew what she—" "You will not finish that sentence," Judge Judy interrupted, raising a single finger. The room froze again. Even the bailiff seemed to pause mid-breath. Judge Judy leaned forward, placing her hands on the bench beside a streak of frosting inching closer to her sleeve. Her voice dropped, quiet, controlled, almost gentle, but the softness carried a clear warning. "I want you to understand something very clearly, Miss Durham," she said. There was a brief, charged silence that seemed to pulse through the entire room. "What you just did was not a performance." Lacey's smile slipped for a split second. "And we are only at the beginning." Lacey let out a quick laugh, too sharp and too forced, cutting through the silence as if she needed to prove she wasn't shaken. But the slight tremble in her hands betrayed her before her voice ever could. Judge Judy noticed it immediately, watching closely like a professional examining the first sign of a deeper issue. The frosting on the bench had already begun to harden around the edges, losing its shine. But Lacey still behaved as if she were center stage, as though everyone else should feel lucky just to witness her. She adjusted her blouse, lifted her chin again, and exhaled loudly, as if all of this bored her. "This is ridiculous," she said, rolling her eyes at Mara. "She's acting like no one's ever thrown cake at her before. People are so dramatic." Mara didn't respond. She quietly brushed crumbs from her sleeves, her movements slow and careful, as if she were trying to make herself smaller, like she wished she could simply disappear. Her gaze stayed lowered, fixed on the frosting pressed into the fabric of her blouse. Judge Judy didn't look at Lacey when she spoke again. "Miss Levinson," she said steadily, "does she usually behave like this toward you?" Mara's throat tightened. "She's been angry with me for weeks." "Angry?" Judge Judy repeated. "Explain." Mara swallowed hard, her jaw shaking slightly. "She ordered a custom cake. I delivered it. She refused to pay the remaining balance and then posted reviews that caused customers to cancel. She told her followers I ruined her daughter's birthday, even though—" Lacey cut her off with a loud scoff that broke through the air. "Oh my God," she snapped. "She's seriously bringing that up." Judge Judy turned her attention to Lacey again, slow and deliberate. "If you interrupt while I'm hearing her," she said calmly, "I assure you, things will become much worse for you." The air in the room tightened instantly. Lacey's mouth stayed open a moment too long before she snapped it shut. Judge Judy shifted her focus back to Mara. "Go on." "I tried to reason with her," Mara said softly. "She sent me messages, dozens of them. She said I had to refund her and apologize, or she'd make sure my business collapsed." A wave of quiet gasps moved through the audience. Lacey threw her hands up. "Oh, come on. That was just an expression. Is that why you threw a cake at her? Judge Judy asked. No, Lacey answered quickly, too quickly. Then she hesitated, realizing the position she'd put herself in. I mean, yes. It's just complicated. Let's make it simple. Judge Judy replied. You claim she ruined your cake. Yet the contract you submitted. She lifted a stained document and flattened it on the bench. Contains changes that were not present in the original version. Lacey blinked rapidly. No, that's the correct one. Judge Judy tapped the page lightly. Is it? Because these handwritten additions appear in a different pen, and the handwriting doesn't suddenly transform mid-sentence. Lacey's jaw tightened. Well, maybe she altered it. Judge Judy raised an eyebrow ever so slightly, a silent warning. Before Lacey could continue, Judge Judy turned toward the clerk. Bring me the original contract file, she ordered. Immediately. Mara's eyes widened. Lacey's confident expression began to thin. The audience leaned forward as the clerk approached, carrying the folder carefully, as if it contained something fragile or dangerous. Lacey's hands curled into fists, small cracks beginning to show in the act she had been maintaining. Each step the clerk took seemed louder than it should have, echoing through the room like a warning. And the moment Judge Judy opened the folder, the entire atmosphere shifted, heavier, sharper, expectant. The document inside was clean, crisp, untouched. Judge Judy lifted it carefully, almost with purpose, as though she already understood its importance. She held it up toward the light, letting it reveal details easily missed at a glance. A deep silence settled over the courtroom, the kind usually reserved for final decisions. Lacey stood with her arms crossed, chin raised, trying to appear confident. But her thumb tapped restlessly against her arm, betraying her nerves. Her smile looked forced now, too rigid, too rehearsed. Mara remained still, her hands clasped together, watching with quiet hope, the kind that comes from someone who has been doubted and is waiting for the truth to finally surface. Judge Judy compared the untouched contract to the frosting, stained version on her bench. The difference was immediate. Her finger traced along the margin. Numbers scratched out, new ones written in, a date changed. The handwriting looked rushed, almost desperate. Miss Durham, she said evenly, her tone precise, the original document contains none of these handwritten changes. Lacey blinked hard. Well, then she must have uploaded the wrong version. Judge Judy didn't respond to the excuse. She simply turned the page slowly, letting the silence stretch. This version increases the amount she supposedly owed you, she continued. It also changes the payment date and removes certain fees. That benefits one person quite a bit. Yeah, Lacey said quickly. Her. Judge Judy repeated, tilting her head slightly. Or you. Lacey swallowed, her expression tightening. Mara took a small step forward. I have screenshots, she said quietly, of the original agreement and the messages where she asked me to change the contract. Lacey turned sharply toward her. Those were just drafts. No, Mara said, and this time, her voice didn't shake. It didn't shrink. It held steady. They were the real agreement. And you threatened me when I refused to make those changes. The audience stirred again. Judge Judy extended her hand. Bring me those screenshots. Mara nodded, pulling out her phone with slightly trembling fingers. The bailiff stepped forward, taking it carefully before passing it to the judge. The screen lit up as Judge Judy scrolled. Her expression shifted, just slightly. A faint tightening around her eyes. A quiet exhale that sounded a lot like confirmation. The entire courtroom seemed to lean in waiting. At last, she placed the phone down. Miss Durham, she said calmly, would you like to explain why the handwriting on this contract matches the handwriting in these messages? The question landed heavily. Lacey froze. Her breath caught. The confident smile disappeared, and for the first time her composure failed her. The lights dimmed slightly as the projector switched on, casting a cold blue glow across the wall. Then the first screenshot appeared, large, clear, undeniable. Lacey's own words stared back at her. Her expression collapsed instantly, like the performance had been cut short. The message shone brightly on the screen. If you don't upgrade the design for free, I'll make sure no one orders from you again. Don't test me. A ripple of discomfort spread through the room. Soft gasps, shifting seats, a low murmur that felt almost alive. The harsh projector light framed Lacey, exposing every flicker of tension in her face, every twitch of her jaw. Judge Judy leaned back slightly, just enough for everyone in the room to feel the shift. It was as if she were allowing the truth to settle into place. Miss Durham, she said, her voice cool and precise. Is this your message? Lacey attempted a laugh, but it faltered midway, catching awkwardly. Anyone could have written that, she said. It's just text. Judge Judy raised an eyebrow. Text that mirrors the same phrasing and language patterns you've used throughout this hearing. Lacey opened her mouth, then closed it again before leaning forward, as if getting closer might somehow make her argument stronger. That doesn't prove anything, she insisted, though her confidence was beginning to crack like fragile ice under pressure. Judge Judy pressed a button. Another screenshot appeared on the wall, this one even more damaging. It showed handwritten edits, a photo of the altered contract, and beneath it, Lacey's own caption, "She'll give in." They always do. A few people in the audience visibly recoiled, whispering under their breath. Even the bailiff shifted slightly, his composure slipping for just a moment. Mara stood quietly, her breathing uneven but her posture firm. She wrapped her arms around herself, not out of fear this time, but to steady herself under the overwhelming relief of finally being believed. Judge Judy's voice lowered. "I'm curious," she said. "When you said they always do, who exactly were you referring to?" Lacey licked her lips nervously, unable to hide the gesture. "People like her," she muttered. "People who don't understand how business works. People who trust you." Judge Judy replied. "People who sign agreements with you. Or people you think you can pressure into compliance." A few heads in the audience nodded in quiet agreement. Lacey shook her head sharply. "You're twisting everything." Judge Judy remained still. "I'm reading your own words." Another screenshot appeared. No dramatic build-up, just the weight of evidence becoming undeniable. "I'll rewrite the contract myself if I have to. She's not winning this." The silence that followed was heavier than before, thick, judgmental, suffocating. Lacey's posture collapsed inward, her arms crossed, not in defiance now, but in self-protection. Her eyes darted everywhere except the screen. She seemed smaller somehow, as if the confidence that once held her upright had dissolved into nothing. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly. "Miss Durham," she said, "why does the handwriting in these edits match the handwriting in your messages?" Lacey tried to respond, but no words came. Her composure finally broke, splintering in front of everyone. Sensing the shift, Judge Judy turned off the screen. "Let's proceed." As the projector went dark, Lacey suddenly let out a loud, unsteady laugh. It didn't fit the moment, it sounded strained, almost frantic, and it cracked halfway through. Judge Judy didn't react. She simply watched as Lacey began to come apart. The lights returned to normal, but the tension didn't fade. The atmosphere felt charged, like the truth had left something unsettled behind. Even the bailiff adjusted his stance, alert now. Lacey pushed her hair back with a shaky hand, trying to pass it off as irritation rather than fear. "You're all taking this way too seriously," she said, gesturing toward the now blank screen. "They're just screenshots. Anyone can fake those." Judge Judy tilted her head slightly, the kind of movement that signaled her patience had run out. "Miss Durham," she said, "every one of those images aligns with your edits, your language, your threats, and the timeline of events. That is not coincidence. That is behavior." Lacey let out a dismissive sound, folding her arms again. "People exaggerate online all the time. That's not illegal. No one said it was." Judge Judy replied evenly. "But lying under oath is." The statement landed heavily. Several people in the courtroom inhaled sharply. Lacey's smile flickered. "I didn't lie." "Didn't you?" Judge Judy said. "Let's find out." She nodded toward the bailiff. From the back row, a young woman stood up, a witness who had remained silent until now. She walked toward the stand with steady steps, holding her purse tightly against her chest. Lacey's eyes widened the moment she recognized the woman. "Wait, no, not her," she snapped. "She's always been against me." The woman stepped forward and took the stand, her voice calm despite the tension. "My name is Danielle Torres. I was at the birthday party when the cake was delivered." Amara tensed. Lacey's expression hardened. Judge Judy folded her hands. "Miss Torres, tell me exactly what you saw." Danielle took a steady breath. Lacey hadn't even looked at the cake yet. She was arguing with her sister about the decorations. Her gaze dropped briefly. Then she knocked the cake off the table herself. She was upset. She threw her drink, it hit the stand, and the cake slid right off. Lacey jumped to her feet. "That's not true." Danielle flinched but didn't stop. She said she would blame the bakery. She said they ruined her daughter's birthday, and that people would believe her because she has a bigger audience. A heavy silence filled the room. Judge Judy watched as Lacey's breathing grew quicker, uneven. "Miss Durham," she said, "did you ever intend to pay the remaining balance for that cake?" Lacey's eyes darted everywhere, toward the bench, the floor, the ceiling, like she was searching for a version of events that hadn't already fallen apart. "It doesn't matter?" she said finally. "She embarrassed me in front of everyone." Mara's voice came quietly, but it cut through everything. "You embarrassed yourself." Even the air seemed to still. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly. "Miss Durham, this is your moment to tell the truth. I strongly suggest you don't waste it." Lacey slammed her hand against the table. "You don't understand what she did to me." Her voice cracked. Not with anger, but something deeper, something unraveling. In that fragile moment, the image she had been holding together began to fall apart completely. Her hand stayed pressed to the table, knuckles pale, her breathing uneven. Judge Judy raised a single finger, and the entire courtroom seemed to freeze. When Lacey spoke again, the confidence was gone, What remained was panic. Silence stretched across the room. Lacey's gaze flickered from face to face. Mara's shaken composure. Danielle's cautious concern, the judge's steady, unyielding presence. The room itself felt tighter, as if the pressure was closing in. "Miss Durham," Judge Judy said quietly, "what exactly did Miss Levinson do to you?" Lacey blinked rapidly. Her mouth opened, but no sound came. For the first time since everything began, her bravado vanished completely. Her shoulders dropped, her voice smaller, not from humility, but from the fear of a truth she could no longer avoid. Lacey swallowed hard. "She looked down on me." A murmur spread through the courtroom. Confusion, disbelief. Judge Judy didn't move. "Look down on you." Lacey's eyes flashed defensively. "You don't get it. People like her always think they're better." Mara flinched. Not out of guilt, but from how wrong the accusation felt. She straightened slightly. "I never thought I was better than you. I was just trying to run my business." "That's what you call it." Lacey shot back, though her voice had lost its edge. "You rejected me." The word hung in the air, heavier than anything she'd said before. Judge Judy's gaze sharpened. "Rejected you, explain." Lacey inhaled shakily. "I applied for a job at her bakery. She said she liked my creativity, but that I wasn't a good fit. She said my designs were too unpredictable." The audience turned toward Mara. Mara's expression softened. "I told you your ideas were bold. I just needed someone who could follow instructions. You left halfway through your trial shift." Lacey's face twisted between anger and embarrassment. "I left because it was insulting. You wanted me decorating cupcakes like I was some kind of beginner." "You were a beginner," Mara said quietly. Lacey froze. The truth hit harder than anything else that day. Judge Judy leaned forward slightly. "Is that why you targeted her business? Because you felt humiliated?" Lacey wiped at her cheek with the back of her hand, smearing her mascara. "I worked so hard on my baking page and nobody cared." "Nobody. But shit," her voice faltered. "She gets attention without even trying." Amara's eyes filled with quiet hurt. "It wasn't personal. I just needed someone reliable." Lacey let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, try telling that to the internet." Judge Judy tapped her pen once, a soft but decisive sound that cut through everything. "Miss Durham," Judge Judy said, her tone steady. "Did Ms. Levinson ever actually harm you?" "No," Lacey murmured. "Did she ever embarrass you in public?" "No." "Did she threaten you?" Lacey's breath faltered. "No." Mara shut her eyes as a tear slipped down her cheek. Judge Judy gave a small nod toward the bailiff. "Play the voicemail." The command cut cleanly through the room. All heads turned as the bailiff connected the speaker. The courtroom seemed to hold a single shared breath. And just as the audio clicked on, Lacey whispered something she never intended anyone to hear. "I'm the one who ruined everything." A faint crackle filled the air, and the entire room leaned forward, drawn in by the moment. Then Lacey's voice, unsteady, slurred, painfully honest, poured through the speaker, and with every word, the last pieces of her defense began to fall apart. A soft hiss of static came first. Lacey squeezed her eyes shut, bracing, but there was no stopping it now. Her own voice followed, unmistakable. "Mara." The recording carried exhaustion, a hint of alcohol, and a sadness she never meant to reveal. "I messed up. Like really messed up." People in the audience shifted uncomfortably, as if they were hearing something too private. At the bench, Judge Judy's expression didn't soften, but it sharpened. This was no longer a performance. This was truth. The voicemail continued, her voice breaking between breaths. You're a good person. Too good, and I keep ruining things. I always do when it feels like I'm the only one losing." In the courtroom, Lacey stared down at her hands, shaking. Mara covered her mouth, tears forming again. Not out of victory, but from the weight of hearing someone's hidden pain, especially someone who had hurt her so deeply. The recording dropped to a near whisper. "I didn't mean to scare you. I hate feeling invisible." The word lingered in the air. Invisible. Then it got worse. "And the cake, it wasn't your fault. I dropped it. I know I blamed you. But I can't say that out loud, not when everyone already thinks I'm a joke." Lacey's shoulders curled inward as if the words physically struck her. Judge Judy watched closely. Every breath, every movement, taking it all in with quiet precision. The message ended with a fragile, broken plea. "I'm sorry. Please don't make me feel like I'm nothing." Silence filled the courtroom again, heavy and suffocating, but different this time. Not judgment, realization. The story Lacey had tried so hard to control had unraveled in her own voice. Mara lowered her hand, blinking through tears. There was no sense of triumph in her expression, only exhaustion. Months of defending herself, months of being attacked, months of carrying fear she never deserved. Judge Judy finally spoke. "Miss Durham," she said gently, "is there anything you'd like to say after hearing your own words?" Lacey swallowed hard. Her lips parted, then pressed together again. She reached for the excuses she once relied on, but nothing came. They had nothing left to stand on. When she finally spoke, her voice was thin and unsteady. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Judge Judy gave a small, decisive nod, but it did. She adjusted the papers in front of her, the soft rustle sounding sharper than it should have. "Let's talk about damages." With that, the last illusion of control Lacey had been holding on to slipped away, quietly, completely, like the cake she once blamed on someone else. Lacey tried to speak again, to argue, but Judge Judy raised her hand. Slow, controlled, final. Most people might have missed the shift, but those paying attention felt it instantly. The balance in the room had changed. The bailiff stepped back into position, already anticipating what would come next. Lacey leaned forward, searching for something, anything, she could still hold on to. There was nothing left. Not after the voicemail, not after the contract, not after the truth had begun to seep through every excuse she made. Judge Judy shuffled a few pages, each movement sounding sharper than it should have. Then she placed them down. "Miss Durham," she said, "you have been dishonest. You altered documents, and you've both directly and indirectly admitted to actions that harmed the plaintiff." She paused briefly. "But there's one more issue we need to address." Lacey's eyes tightened, irritation masking a flicker of panic. "What else could you possibly need?" Judge Judy leaned back slightly, fingers calmly interlocked. "I took the time to look into your social media activity before this hearing." The atmosphere in the room seemed to cool instantly. Lacey stiffened. "My social media? Why would you even do that?" "Because," Judy replied evenly, "what you choose to make public is open to review." A quiet ripple moved through the audience. The clerk approached with a small stack of printed screenshots. Judy arranged them neatly on the bench, tapping the top page once. "Here," she said. "There's a post from 3 days before the party, the one where you claimed Miss Levinson ruined your event." Lacey swallowed. "So what? You posted that before the cake had even been delivered." The reaction was immediate, soft gasps, murmurs, disbelief spreading across the room. Lacey opened her mouth to respond, but Judy continued without pause. "And this one," she said, lifting another sheet, "from the night before. You mocked the bakery, referred to the plaintiff as a cupcake clown, and encouraged your followers to watch how a real woman deals with a fake business." Lacey reached toward the papers. "You're twisting it." It was satire. Judy pulled them back slightly, her tone unchanged. "I'm not finished." Another page landed on the bench with a quiet but heavy impact. "This," she said, "was posted the morning of the hearing." The audience leaned in as Judy read aloud. "If the judge gets snippy, I swear I'll throw the cake in her face too." The room went completely still, the kind of silence that feels like something irreversible has just happened. Lacey's face drained of color. She stood frozen, caught by her own words, words that now exposed what she had tried to pass off as a moment of emotion. Judy lowered the paper, her gaze steady and unrelenting. "You didn't lose control," she said. "You didn't act on impulse. This was planned." Lacey shook her head, her breath uneven. "It was a joke." "No," Judy replied, her voice cutting cleanly through the air. "It was intentional." The confidence Lacey once carried disappeared completely. Judy tapped the page again, a small motion carrying enormous weight. "Now," she said quietly, "we address the consequences." The word premeditated didn't just echo. It settled heavy and cold in the center of the courtroom. Lacey looked as though the ground had shifted beneath her. The silence that followed wasn't shock anymore. It was consequence taking form. Judge Judy didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. Her composure alone reshaped the room. An unspoken authority settled over everyone present, making even the spectators sit straighter, quieter. "Miss Durham," she said, folding her hands on the bench, "you planned an attack on the plaintiff. You even considered directing that behavior toward this court, and you carried out part of that plan on record." The printed post sat between them like undeniable proof. Lacey's breathing grew shallow, fragile. "It was just a joke," she said weakly. "People say things like that all the time." Judy held her gaze. "A joke contains humor. This shows intent." A low murmur spread through the room, uneasy and heavy. Even the bailiff's stance shifted. No longer just watchful, but expectant. Lacey's hands trembled as she clasped them tightly, her knuckles paling. "You don't understand," she said. She made everything worse." Mara looked up, startled by the accusation. "I didn't do anything to you," she said softly. "You pulled me into a battle you were really having with yourself." Lacey's face tightened, panic flickering behind what little defiance she had left. "You don't understand," she said, her voice breaking. "She took something from me." Judy leaned slightly forward. "What exactly did she take, Miss Durham?" The question landed clean and precise. Lacey blinked, her composure already fractured, now beginning to fall apart completely. She searched for something, anything, that could justify her anger, something that still made her the victim. At last, her voice slipped out in a whisper. "My chance." The room went still, confusion rippling through the onlookers. Judy didn't react. Your chance at what? Lacey looked down, twisting her fingers together, her breathing uneven. To be someone, to prove I was actually good at something, to not feel like a joke. Her shoulders trembled slightly, small but real. Mara's expression softened despite herself. Judy noticed, but didn't let that moment blur the truth. You had an opportunity, she said calmly, to prove yourself through effort, honesty, and responsibility. Instead, you chose to lie. You chose aggression. You chose to hurt someone. Lacey's eyes filled, but she turned away before the tears could fall. I didn't mean for it to go this far. But it did, Judy replied, because you kept feeding the lie. She lifted the stack of evidence. Contracts, screenshots, posts, the voicemail, forming a quiet tower of undeniable truth. This isn't about embarrassment, she continued. This is about accountability. Lacey's breathing faltered. Her posture folded inward. You don't know what she took from me, she whispered. Judy's gaze sharpened, not with anger, but with recognition that something deeper was surfacing. Then tell me, she said softly. What did she take? Lacey's lips trembled. Before she could answer, the courtroom fell silent, every eye fixed on her, waiting for something real, something she had buried beneath all the lies. Do you believe regret should erase responsibility? Judy asked. Or does justice still require consequences? Lacey didn't answer right away. She stood there shaking, like someone standing on the edge of a truth they never intended to reveal. When she finally looked up, the arrogance was gone, replaced by something raw enough to quiet the entire room. Judy waited, not impatient, not harsh, just still. Silence in the right hands can pull truth to the surface. Lacey's breathing grew uneven. She wiped her hands against her clothes, leaving faint smears of frosting she hadn't noticed before. The remnants of her earlier outburst made her look less composed, more human in an uncomfortable way. She took my chance, Lacey murmured again. Your chance at what? Judy asked gently. Lacey's jaw tightened, shame flickered in her eyes. My chance to matter. Mara froze. The room stilled again. Even the bailiff, usually unreadable, shifted slightly. Judy leaned back just enough to signal she wasn't attacking this part. She was listening. Explain. Lacey swallowed hard, her hands clenching and unclenching. I applied for a job at her bakery 2 years ago. I brought my portfolio, my designs, the best work I'd ever done. I thought if someone believed in me, maybe I could finally believe in myself. Something in her voice cracked the atmosphere. Mara looked stricken, not defensive, not angry, just quietly shaken by the idea that a routine decision had led to this much resentment. I told her I liked her ideas, Mara said softly, even though no one had asked her to speak. I thought you were creative. You said I was unpredictable, Lacey replied, but without bite. You said I needed structure, that I wasn't ready. Mara frowned slightly. Because you walked out halfway through your trial shift. Lacey flinched. The truth hit hard. I left because I panicked. Everyone was better than me. Faster. And when I messed up the frosting, one of your decorators laughed. I thought everyone was laughing at me. Judy nodded slowly, letting the realization unfold. So you assumed humiliation where there wasn't any. Lacey nodded, tears gathering but still refusing to fall. I told myself you crushed me, that you made me feel small. But I already felt small. Her voice cracked again. And when your shop started getting more customers, more attention, when your cakes became popular. She struggled to finish. It felt like you became everything I wanted to be and couldn't. The mood in the room shifted. Not toward forgiveness, not toward sympathy alone, but toward understanding how pain, left unchecked, can twist into something destructive. And so, Judy said softly, you built a version of her in your mind, a villain who had wronged you. Lacey nodded. And then, Judy continued, you used that story as justification to hurt her. This time Lacey didn't argue. I didn't know how to stop once it started. She murmured, barely audible. Judy studied her for a moment, then asked the question that stripped everything down. So all of this, the harassment, the lies, the cake, came from the idea that she represented the life you wanted but didn't have. Lacey's voice broke completely. Wes! The truth lingered in the air, heavy, real, and difficult to ignore. The room absorbed it in silence. But just as it began to settle, Judy leaned forward again, her gaze sharp, her expression unreadable. The atmosphere had softened around Lacey's vulnerability. Judy hadn't. She wasn't finished. Miss Durham, she said, calm but firm, you've explained why you acted out. You haven't explained how far you went. Lacey quickly wiped her face, embarrassed. I've already told you everything. No, Judy replied. You've told me everything you're willing to admit. That's not the same thing. A shift moved through the room. Lacey stiffened, her eyes darting toward Mara as if looking for protection that wasn't there. Mara stood still, not angry, just drained, as if all she wanted now was the truth, no matter how painful. Judy tapped her pen lightly. Let me ask you something simple. When the cake arrived at the party, The question shattered whatever fragile composure Lacey had left. She froze, her breath catching. Seconds stretched uncomfortably. Her lips parted, but no denial came. Judy watched her steadily. Ms. Torres testified that you knocked the cake over. The voicemail confirms you admitted fault privately. But there's still something missing. Lacey blinked rapidly. I didn't. Stop. Judy cut in sharply. Do not lie now. The truth is already closing in. Lacey's breathing grew uneven, her chest rising and falling in jagged waves. She looked trapped. Not by the judge, not even by the evidence, but by her own conscience finally giving way. I didn't mean to, she whispered. Mean to what? Judy asked. Lacey's voice shrank into something fragile. I damaged the cake before the party. A wave of gasps spread through the room. Judy didn't react. Explain. Lacey squeezed her eyes shut, tears slipping through despite her effort to hold them back. The design, it wasn't what I imagined. It wasn't perfect. And when I saw it, I felt that same humiliation all over again from the bakery, from failing before, from everything. She took a shaky breath. So I scraped the side a little. I told myself I could fix it, but I couldn't. And then I got angry. At myself, at the cake, at her. Her voice broke completely. By the time Mara arrived, it was already ruined. I just made it look like she did it. Mara covered her mouth, a quiet, strained sound escaping her, hurt and disbelief colliding at once. The audience stared in stunned silence. Judy leaned back slightly. So you sabotaged your own order to justify destroying her reputation? Lacey nodded, collapsing inward. I just needed a reason, something to blame instead of admitting I failed again. Judy allowed the silence to settle. Not as punishment, but as something that made the truth impossible to escape. Then she spoke, her voice low and final. Miss Durham, you didn't just ruin that cake. A brief pause. You ruined yourself. Lacey broke down completely, the weight of her confession finally too much to carry. And with those words, something shifted in the room. Something irreversible. Her entire case had been built on a lie she created herself, piece by piece. The echo of her confession lingered like smoke that refused to fade. No one moved. No one spoke. It wasn't just a revelation. It reshaped everything. Lacey remained hunched over, shoulders shaking, mascara streaking down her face. She wasn't pretending anymore. The arrogance, the deflection, the forced confidence, all gone. What remained was something raw, exposed, and undeniably human, and the courtroom felt changed because of it. The room was no longer tense in the usual sense. It was heavier than that, quiet, subdued, like everyone was sitting inside the aftermath of something they hadn't fully processed. Judge Judy remained still, hands neatly folded on the bench. She offered no comfort, but no harshness either. She simply allowed Lacey to remain in the reality she had finally admitted. For the first time, Lacey didn't fight the silence. She just cried. Across the room, Mara stood with her arms gently wrapped around herself. Tears gathered in her eyes too, but hers came from something different. Not guilt, not fear, but the emotional shock of finally understanding the full extent of what had been directed at her. Judge Judy broke the silence. Miss Levinson, she said quietly, I want you to describe clearly how Miss Durham's actions impacted your life. Mara swallowed hard. Her voice shook at first, but she steadied herself with a breath. It destroyed me, she said. Not dramatically, not with anger, just honesty. The negative reviews she pushed ruined my reputation. People stopped trusting my business. I lost 3 weddings, 2 corporate events, and my biggest clients went silent. Lacey's sobbing softened into broken, uneven breaths. I couldn't sleep. Mara continued. Every notification made me think it was another attack, another message, or someone influenced by her posts. She wiped her face. My bakery was everything I had, and I watched people believe things that weren't true. I watched them turn on me for something I never did. Her voice cracked at the end, and she fell silent. Judge Judy nodded once. Acknowledgement, not sympathy. Thank you. That needed to be said clearly. Mara stepped back, still shaking. She didn't look like someone seeking revenge. She looked like someone who simply wanted her life back, peace, stability. Her name restored. Judge Judy shifted her attention to Lacey, whose breathing remained uneven and broken. Miss Durham, she said firmly, this damage was created by you. Not Miss Levinson. Not the cake. Not your audience. You. Lacey gave a small, defeated nod. She couldn't respond. You sabotaged your own product, Judy continued, and then used that damage to justify destroying someone else's reputation. Lacey winced as if each word landed physically. And why? Judy asked quietly. To avoid admitting insecurity. To avoid discomfort. To avoid facing yourself. Each question stripped away another layer of defense until there was nothing left to hide behind. Lacey finally whispered, I didn't know who I was when I wasn't angry. Judy's expression stayed controlled, but her tone softened slightly, not into kindness, but something more grounded. You will learn, she said, but you will learn through consequences. The courtroom stayed still, absorbing both the harm caused and the pain that led to it. Mara looked at Lacey with a conflicted expression. Hurt, but also a faint trace of understanding she didn't seem comfortable with. The mood shifted again when Judge Judy lifted her gavel, not to strike, but to move forward. Now, she said, we'll address accountability. The emotional unraveling had ended. What came next was responsibility. The room felt like it was waiting for impact. Judge Judy straightened, and the air seemed to tighten with her. She pulled the stack of evidence closer, aligning it carefully. Contracts, screenshots, threats, altered records, all of it forming a clear record of what had happened. Miss Durham, she said, we are no longer discussing feelings or misunderstandings. We are discussing consequences. Lacey wiped her face with shaking hands, nodding weakly, almost mechanically. Judge Judy turned to Mara. Step forward. Mara moved to the center. She stood upright though her hands were tightly clasped, as if holding herself together from within. Tell me again, Judy said, what you lost. In specific terms. Mara exhaled slowly. I lost my clients. My bookings dropped almost immediately. People called me careless, dishonest, even unsafe. I had to refund orders I couldn't afford. I fell behind on rent. My shop was vandalized. A sharp, painful sound escaped from Lacey. Mara continued, quieter now. And emotionally I felt watched. Targeted. Like I was the villain in a story I never wrote. Judge Judy nodded once. Thank you. She turned back to Lacey. Miss Durham, do you have anything to say before I proceed? Lacey opened her mouth, but nothing came at first. Then, barely audible, she said, I never meant to ruin her life. Judge Judy replied gently, but you did, but with the weight of simple truth behind it. An intention does not erase impact. The audience murmured, a quiet wave of agreement moving through the room. Judge Judy continued, her tone precise. Here is what has been established. You altered a legal contract for financial advantage. You harassed the plaintiff online and encouraged others to do the same. You created a false version of events to shift blame onto her. You damaged your own product and used that damage as justification for your actions. You planned an attack, as shown in your own posts, and you carried part of that out in this courtroom. Each statement landed like a strike, even without the gavel moving. With every point, Lacey seemed to shrink further, her expression collapsing under the pressure of it all. And despite all of that, Judy added, Miss Levinson did not retaliate. She did not defame you. She sought resolution, not revenge. The contrast between them became unmistakable. Lacey looked at Mara again, really looked at her, not as an opponent, not as a symbol of frustration, but as a person she had deeply harmed. Her voice broke. I'm sorry. It wasn't loud or performative, just honest. Mara closed her eyes, a tremor running through her shoulders. I know, she whispered. Somehow those words carried even more weight than blame. Judy allowed the moment to settle before speaking again. Miss Durham, she said, your apology is recorded, but it does not undo what follows. Her tone carried finality. Lacey's breath caught. This was no longer about an emotional breakdown. This was about consequence. The courtroom had gone quiet in a way that felt uneasy, like the pause after lightning before thunder arrives, and Judge Judy's raised gavel was that thunder waiting to fall. She held it in place for a moment longer, letting everything, truth, regret, accountability, sit fully exposed. Then her voice came, calm but firm. Before I issue my ruling, understand what justice means here. It acknowledges harm, but it is not shaped by it. Lacey sat broken and silent, tears falling without resistance now. Mara stood opposite her, steady but emotional, not angry anymore, just exhausted by everything that had happened. Judy looked at Mara first. You came here seeking clarity and protection for your name, she said. Mara nodded faintly. I just wanted to feel safe again. That simple statement settled across the room, understood by everyone present. Then Judy turned to Lacey. Look at her, she said. Lacey hesitated, shame pulling her gaze downward. Look at her. Judy repeated. Slowly Lacey lifted her eyes. Across from her, Mara met her gaze. No words passed between them, only everything that had led them there. This, Judy said, is the cost of your choices. Not money, not paperwork, people. Lacey's voice cracked. I never wanted her to be afraid of me. But she was, Judy replied quietly, because your actions left her no other option. Mara lowered her gaze, a tear slipping down slowly, carrying the weight of everything she had endured. And you, Judy continued, turning slightly toward Mara, have carried the burden of someone else's insecurity. You've lived under false judgment for something you never did. Mara nodded faintly. I know. Judy exhaled slowly. Justice recognizes pain, she said, but it is never driven by it. Lacey whispered again, smaller this time, less defensive and more broken. I'm sorry. Mara didn't respond with anger. She only gave a small, tired nod, not forgiveness, not closure, just acknowledgement. The room shifted, but didn't lighten. This wasn't reconciliation. It was the moment just before judgment becomes final. Judy lowered the gavel slightly. We are nearly finished, she said. The courtroom held its breath. Before the ruling is given, she added, ask yourselves, Can people truly change, or do they simply learn to hide who they are more effectively? A long pause followed. Then the gavel descended. The sound echoed through the room, from final, controlled. "Here is my ruling," Judge Judy said. Her voice cut cleanly through the silence. She first addressed Mara. "For the financial losses caused by targeted harassment, including lost contracts, cancellations, and reputational damage, you are awarded full restitution." A visible shift moved through Mara, relief softening her posture for the first time. Additionally, Judy continued, "Miss Durham will issue a formal written and public apology addressing the specific harm caused, including false statements and online incitement." Lacey nodded faintly. No resistance remained. And due to the deliberate nature of the conduct in this courtroom, Judy added, "This case will be referred for further review by production authorities." The room absorbed it quietly. No celebration, no shock, just acceptance. Justice had been delivered clearly and without spectacle. Judy turned back to Lacey. "You are capable of change," she said. "But change requires honesty, and honesty requires ownership without excuses." Lacey's chin trembled again. "I understand," she whispered. "I hope you do," Judy replied. "Because truth doesn't disappear when it's uncomfortable. It outlasts everything else, pride, image, and denial." Lacey lowered her head, not in collapse anymore, but in realization. Then Judy's attention shifted to Mara, her tone softening. "Miss Levinson," she said, "you may return to your work. Keep creating what you do best." Mara let out a small breath, almost a laugh through tears. "Thank you, Your Honor." The room felt different now. Not fixed, not healed, but lighter, as if truth had finally made space to exist. Judy lifted the gavel one final time. "This case is concluded." The sound marked the end. Lacey remained still, quietly crying. Mara exhaled slowly, and the courtroom slowly returned to motion.